Coming up on NewsNite, we continue our discussion about how the state draws its congressional and legislative districts, this time with one of the senators who crafted a bipartisan option for that plan. That's next on NewsNite. Happy New Year, and welcome to NewsNite for January 4th, 2013. Since this is the first program of the new year, we thought it would be appropriate to talk about a potentially new way that we will be redistricting here in the state of Ohio. Our December 14th program, which you can access on www.newsnight.net, featured a panel of a journalist, a political scientist, and a community activist. And they talked about redistricting in the state and what had resulted from maps that were redrawn last year. Well, now we have with us State Senator Frank LaRose, who is part of a bipartisan task force to change the way that we redistrict in Ohio with a resolution that was approved by the State Senate in mid-December. Frank, thank you so much for being with us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Jody.
And Happy New Year.
Wonderful to celebrate the new year with you.
I want to start with some of the basics. You are part of a bipartisan task force, you and State Senator Tom Sawyer.
Correct.
And then there were two other gentlemen on the task force. How and why did the four of you come together, and why was it important that you work on an issue like this?
Well, quite honestly, the four of us believed, and I believe, that the way that we draw lines in the state of Ohio, the way that we draw legislative districts is not optimal. It needs to be improved, and I believe that it's the cause of great dysfunction in Columbus, and I think that Ohio can do better, and I think that Ohio wants us to do better.
How did the four of you work together? I mean, it was a truly bipartisan task force.
Thoroughly bipartisan, and actually it started off with two House members and two senators. Tom Sawyer and I, both here from the Akron area, joined up with Representative Mike Duffy and Representative Ted Celeste, one Republican and one Democrat, sort of bicameral and bipartisan in nature. And we worked over the winter last year and introduced a resolution to sort of get the conversation started, and that morphed into the bipartisan redistricting reform task force, which was chaired jointly by Senator Nina Turner from Cleveland area and Senator Keith Faber from the Salina, Ohio area.
But the work of that task force had to be put in abeyance because of Issue 2, correct?
Sure. Issue 2 ended up sort of dominating the conversation over the summer and fall because of the potential of that changing the way that the redistricting process goes. I was out there working against Issue 2, not because I think that we need to keep the status quo, because I think that we need to change it, but because I believed that Issue 2 was not the right solution for Ohio.
So Issue 2 goes down to defeat, and does the task force come together then and quickly put together what essentially was passed by the Senate?
Well, specifically 4 senators came together, and we all started talking after the election, calling one another, and again decided that we needed to do this in a bipartisan way. For it to be legitimate, for it to be balanced, and for it to be the right solution for Ohio, it really needs to be a bipartisan solution. And so Senator Faber, Senator Turner, Senator Sawyer and I all came together, and really that group represents a great sort of diversity of ideologies, of geography throughout the state, and we started meeting over the last several weeks frequently to come up with perhaps a new version or a draft of the resolution that we could bring before the full Senate, and we did so successfully in mid-December.
So explain to us, as simple as you can, and you have said this is one of the benefits of this particular plan is that it is simple, it is easy.
Sure.
Explain how redistricting would work under this proposal.
Sure. Well, in fact, my friend Senator Sawyer challenged me on the Senate floor a couple weeks ago to explain it in 30 seconds, because we've been saying all along you have to be able to fit it into the classic elevator speech, that 30-second speech. So I won't quite do it that fast because I had to talk like the disclaimer guy at the end of the commercials in order to get it in 30 seconds. But simply stated, the plan that we passed in the Senate creates a 7-member redistricting commission. It's the governor, it's the auditor, the Secretary of State, and then it's an appointee of each of the legislative leaders. So the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader of the House, the President of the Senate, and the Minority Leader of the Senate. Those 7 members form the Redistricting Commission, and they're responsible for both state legislative redistricting as well as U.S. congressional districts. Those 7 members are required to meet at the following the decennial census. The meeting is called by the governor. Someone has to call the meeting. And they go through the process of drawing the lines. Now, in order to, and this is the crucial part of this, in order to pass any map, the commission has to vote at least 5 out of 7 members, supermajority requirement, including at least 1 minority member. So whatever the party is that's currently in power, is represented, but most importantly, that minority voice is represented as well, and that's what's currently missing from the system. Now, we have a number of guidelines that the commission is to follow, but we took pains to not be too prescriptive about it. You can't necessarily take a one-size-fits-all or a formulaic approach to this. The demographic and sociological complexity of Ohio is such that you can't put in strictures and rules that start to conflict with one another. We believe that minority voice and that supermajority requirement will guide the commission to draw more balanced maps than what we currently produce through our current system.
There was a question I asked the panel a couple of weeks ago about, is this not akin to the fox guarding the hen house? When you have politicians whose tenure in office obviously depends on voters, when you have politicians who are in fact drawing legislative and congressional districts, aren't you guys foxes?
Well, I think that the classic question that you raise begs the rhetorical question and answer of, do we believe in representative democracy? Do we believe that the people are represented by the people, by the folks that they elect to go to Columbus and do their work? And this is a conversation that Senator Sawyer and I have had a number of times. We believe that the people serving down in Columbus directly represent their constituents. That's the system that we have. And we further believe that you cannot take politics out of this inherently political process. The drawing of legislative districts is an inherently political process. You have to recognize that, I believe, and then set forth a process that forces consensus and brings both sides to the table and forces them and compels them to act like statesmen and women and come up with a balanced solution.
But is that going to happen? Is this kind of a commission going to prevent gerrymandering, or, as you told me, gerrymandering?
And as I mentioned also, it's an anniversary of that, going back to Elbridge Gerry, the governor of New York, that had whose name the process has. I don't think that it'll ever be completely prevented. I think, though, that the district lines that you will see out of a commission like ours will be more balanced. Again, the biggest flaw to our current system is that it amounts to a winner-take-all proposition. Whichever party is able to control the process is likely to, and some would say almost has the responsibility to, use that process to the best of their ability to maximize partisan advantage. Both Democrats and Republicans have engaged in the process over time. The bad news is that with computer technology and GIS mapping, we're getting better and better at it, and that's a problem. The district lines that were put in place here recently, I don't believe are the best thing for Ohio, and I think that we can do better. And I believe that after the 2020 process, with hopefully a commission like ours in place, that we will do better.
But is there anything written into the resolution that talks about competitive districts, compact districts, keeping communities together? Sure.
The things that we specifically emphasize are communities of interest, which is something that's easy to say but very hard to define, how you exactly define a community of interest, but we took pains to make sure that was in there. It's important. As well as compactness. There are a number of things in there for compactness. As far as competitiveness goes, again, the idea of a minority voice and a supermajority requirement, and remember, only in the rarest of circumstances will you have a commission where there's only 2 minority members. I mean, the current scenario in the state of Ohio has one party in control of most of the the offices, but that's not normal. That's not the normal circumstance. And so we believe that sort of a balanced voice at the table will give you those competitive, more competitive districts than what we have right now.
And I do want to let our viewers know that on newsnight.net, we will post not only a blog, we'll post a blog about this, but we will also have a copy of that resolution and a link to the resolution, so in fact you can read it. And I do want to urge you to go back and look at the December 14th NewsNight program that also talked about this from different perspectives.
For more NewsNight content, including extended discussions, full interviews, and the chance to speak your mind about the issues, join us online at newsnight.net.
Frank, I want to ask you a couple of other questions about this.
Sure.
And one would be, how is this resolution any different than resolutions that have been passed in the past? Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean, I have documentation that there were 23 years there, from 1978 to 2001, where every year there was something introduced into the General Assembly to change the way we redistrict. How will this resolution be any different, and will it make an effect?
Well, here's the first difference, and the biggest difference, I think this is historic, is the fact that this was bipartisan. Remember, we brought conservative Republicans, liberal Democrats, moderates, all together in this process and drafted something that, as I said on the Senate floor, this plan is not good for Republicans. This plan is not good for Democrats. This plan is really, I believe, right down the middle and good for Ohioans. So that's the difference. Is the resolution that we passed in mid-December is balanced in that it was supported by both Republicans and Democrats, and it was opposed by both Republicans and Democrats. And I also mentioned on the floor that when I started hearing grumbling from both Republican political operatives and I started hearing grumbling from Democrat political operatives, I knew we were on the right track. When I recognized that the partisans were trying to throw marbles under our feet, I knew that we were probably doing the right thing. And we passed something that is legitimately balanced because it doesn't benefit either side.
You passed this in a lame duck session of the Senate. Mm-hmm. Do you have to start over when the new legislative year, now that the new legislative year is going to begin? Mm-hmm. And the second part to that question is, it's in the Senate. What about the House?
Well, the first part of the question, do we have to start over? Yes. Now that it's a new year and a new legislative session, and we'll be down in Columbus here in early January, the process will have to start over, but not from scratch. The good news is we found this consensus. Most of the same members are returning to the Senate, and so we've got a framework. We've said that perhaps you can look at the resolution that we passed back in December as symbolic. It's more than symbolic. It really plants the flag and lays forth a roadmap where there was and will continue to be in the Senate bipartisan agreement on how to do this. As far as the House goes, I really hope that they'll take this up and work on it. There's been, I'll be honest with you, some resistance that I've heard from both the House Republicans and the House Democrats, but I hope that they'll take a look at this because this is something that Ohioans want us to work on as statesmen and stateswomen. And as I said before, if you believe in that representative democracy, that system that we have, then it's our job to look at this issue and not leave it to ballot initiatives or sort of an effort from one party or another. It really has to be something that's done jointly as a team.
Okay, so worst case scenario, the new Senate passes this, and it then goes, because obviously the House has to pass something of this sort in order for it to start moving ahead.
Sure.
What if the House won't take it up? What if they don't want to do it? What do you do at that point? What do voters in Ohio do at that point?
Well, I guess the classic saying is that's when you call your representative. I mean, I think that if folks recognize, and I believe they do, what an important thing it is to change the way we draw district lines in Ohio, then I believe that they'll put pressure on the House to take this issue up. And I'm not saying that the resolution we passed in the Senate has to move through the House untouched. In fact, I believe that there can always be improvements made. You mentioned earlier the web address for folks to go and see a copy of the resolution. I welcome input. I hope that that folks will take a look at this and offer ways to make it better. We're always looking for ideas, and as it moves through the House, hopefully it can get better. But it needs to be passed by a supermajority vote in both the House and the Senate for it to be referred to the ballot.
Okay, and that would be the next step. Once the legislature passes it,
Correct.
It would then go on the ballot, and then voters would have an opportunity to decide what, yay or nay.
Yeah, and it's a change to the Constitution, so it does have to go before the voters, but in this case it would be legislatively referred to the ballot, not through gathering signatures, but by, again, a supermajority vote in both the House and the Senate, and to really put forward something that's bipartisan and saying to the people of Ohio, your state legislature has worked hard to draft this plan, meeting in the middle and putting in a lot of late nights, to tell you the truth, to find that compromise, which is not a dirty word, and unfortunately some people started to think it is, and find something that's truly balanced.
Have you heard at all from any representatives from Voters First Ohio, the group that was backing Issue 2 and that is very adamantly working toward redistricting?
Sure. That same group we met with before this past fall's election, when I was originally working with Representatives Duffy and Celeste and Senator Sawyer and I. We sat down with them to talk through the differences between their proposal and our proposal. I haven't met with them recently, but I'd always welcome the chance to do so. And I don't know if they continue to exist as a group under that name, but I know some of the same people that are very interested in improving the process. The League of Women Voters has shown great leadership on this, and they're very passionate about it. They came in to testify before us in the Senate, and I welcome that. That's how we improve this resolution through the legislative process.
Is there anything in this resolution that would call for an early redrawing of the maps, or are we essentially tied into and essentially stuck with the maps we currently have for the next 8 years?
All the plans that we've been working on keep with 200 years of tradition, which is in Ohio we draw lines every 10 years. We draw them following the decennial census, which also, by the way, is how every other state does it. In a few rare circumstances, other states have tried to draw lines mid-decennial, meaning between censuses, and in some cases it's not worked out well. I think that there have been some court challenges to them, but we believe that I think one of the hallmarks of a good, stable democracy is predictable election cycles and predictable processes. And certainly in this case, the people of Ohio are accustomed to redrawing lines only every 10 years. I'm not in love with the last set of lines that we passed, but the fact is, as I've said, the 2011 lines were determined at the 2010 ballot box. And for us to sort of go back and change the rules after the game's already been played, so to speak, is not in the best interest of our stable democracy that we have here in Ohio. So we believe that looking forward to the next redistricting cycle, which is 2020, it'll be here before we know it, is the best way to do this. And really, the time is now, because as we learned, I think, in 2009, when the closer you get to that next redistricting, the less politically feasible it is to change the process. That's why Senator Sawyer and I are pushing this right now, that we need to get this done before the prognosticators can figure out what the 2020 balance of power may look like in Ohio.
If things don't go the way they want to, do you foresee groups like Voters First Ohio coming back continually over the next 8 or 10 years with initiatives to try to change that? And why would that not be the way to go?
Well, I do. In fact, that's one of the things that I brought up to my colleagues. I think that there's great dissatisfaction throughout the state with the way that we currently draw districts. And as a result of that dissatisfaction, you're going to see this issue come up over and over again. The problem with doing it that way is that it often lends itself to a Republican-backed effort or a Democrat-backed effort, where one party or the other draws up a plan that suits them, and then they gather the signatures, or through their surrogates and supporters, they gather the signatures and then they put it on the ballot. Well, that's not what I think Ohioans expect, and that's not what's in the best interest of our state. We don't want to have a Republican redistricting reform proposal or a Democrat redistricting reform proposal. We want to have something that's more balanced than that, and that's what we hope to accomplish, and that's why we're working so hard to do so.
How confident are you that this will go on the ballot next year? And if people want to see this go on the ballot, what can they do to help push this?
I guess I'll say I'm confident that it should, and I'm willing to keep working at it. I'm a rookie in the state Senate, so I'm not the most experienced down there. That's why I partnered with my friend Tom Sawyer, who is obviously an experienced legislator. But I think it should go forward, and I'm going to keep working at it. I'm going to work tirelessly, and I know that my partners are as well that have committed to this. What can people do if they believe in this? They can all the traditional things. Contact your state senators and representatives. Contact them on Facebook. Give them a call. I encourage people to use something besides email. The email inbox blows up every now and then, and it's hard to sort through. Write them a handwritten letter. That's the best way to get somebody's attention, by the way. Okay. The orders in my office are, if it's a handwritten letter, it goes straight to my desk. But the writing letters to the editor. Getting involved in community groups. I know, again, League of Women Voters is one, but there are many others that really value this and want to see it change. So just good old-fashioned lobbying your members of the state legislature and tell them that this is important to you.
I do want to thank you and obviously your colleagues for working toward this. And in the few minutes we have left, sure. I want our viewers to know that we are taping this program early, and we are just a couple of days away from the terrible tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary School. And I'd like to get some reaction from you as a parent, 16-month-old, and as a legislator. What was your reaction to what happened, and what can you, as a state legislator, what should people expect from their government at a point like this?
Well, when I found out about this tragedy, the members of my Senate caucus were together for a policy conference. It was just after the lame duck session, and we'd gathered to talk about next year's agenda and things that we can work on. And a senior member of the Senate staff came in and said, "Can I have everybody's attention? You guys should know about this." And, of course, the room fell silent, and it stopped us in our tracks. And I did, as I think a lot of people, I thought immediately of my child. I became a father 18 months ago, and I think of that beautiful little girl who comes running every time I come home. And I think that watching his press conference and watching the memorial ceremony, that the same thing happened to the president. You could tell that he was thinking of this not only as the President of the United States, but also as a father to two beautiful little girls. That's the context that I think a lot of us put this in. I think this is something that we need to address. The state of Ohio needs to address this, and the nation needs to address this. The solutions are sometimes we can have disagreements on. Is it more gun control? Is it better security? Is it something societal? Is it us? And all of those are topics that we have to discuss. And I believe that we have to address this issue. I mean, we expect better.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask was Sandy Hook, will that be the tipping point for us to finally come to some very realistic conversation about reinstating the ban for assault weapons, about dealing with mental health issues, about making sure that background checks are done, making sure that you can't just go to a gun show and anybody can go in and purchase a gun. Sure. What can we do?
Yeah, and I tend to focus on the perpetrator and not the implement. Again, I think that there's a reasonable conversation to be had about updating gun laws, and there are some things that we can do. But restricting access to firearms, I don't know if that is the most practical solution. Remember that in the case of Sandy Hook, these were legally owned.
Yes, they were.
Now, the question is, if this mother who legally owned these firearms knew that her son was having issues, and chances are she would have, why did she grant him access to these firearms? Why weren't they as many of us that are responsible firearms owners? Why weren't they in a safe? But
what was a regular citizen doing with an assault weapon, with an assault rifle? Is that the kind of thing? I mean, I can understand the Army or the Navy or the Marines needing that, but a normal citizen, what does a normal citizen need with an assault rifle?
Well, and so this is a more technical conversation, and I remember I used to be in the military, but the functional difference between an assault rifle and a hunting rifle can be very little sometimes, and it comes down to, you know, there's nothing that makes an assault rifle more inherently dangerous than a hunting rifle. It's a matter of how fast can you fire it.
And how many clips you can use in it.
Well, exactly. But again, you know, those conversations can be had. You can look at the tools that are used to do this great violence, and I think that we ought to. But really, I think that the focus ought to be on where we're going as a society, this the pervasive violence, this sort of culture that exists among some people, and also better treatment for those that have true mental illness. And I think that that's something that we need to cope with as a society. And there may be questions that need to be answered as far as school security. You know, how do we create a more secure and safe environment in our schools and in other public places as well?
Well, and I understand, and the mental health issue is a big part of this whole issue, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I guess, and I will make a personal comment here, I would rather see us protect our children than protect the rights of gun owners, but that's obviously a personal opinion.
Sure. Well, it's a matter of practicality, what works, and that's where I come down on. Let's have a conversation about it. Everything's on the table, I believe. Everything needs to be on the table, but let's have a conversation about it and talk about what works. You know, can you take all the guns off the street? I don't know if that's possible. Are there always going to be people in our society that want to do violent things, and can you prevent them from doing it in all circumstances? Probably not. But can we do better? I think so. Well,
and thank you, Senator LaRose, for being here, not only expressing your opinions about this, but for what you're doing for redistricting. And let's hope, as you said before, maybe the time is now to do something like this.
Sure.
Well, thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks,
and we want to thank our viewers for being with us. This is NewsNite. Stay tuned for our program next Friday. We hope to see you back here then. Good night.